questions like, are we talking Shatner or Chris Pine?
Fair enough.
Let's see if I press present on this one. Welcome to RTC Web at IETF 100. As you may have noticed, one of our chairs is Electric Fluffy over here on the right-hand side, participating via Meet Echo. If Sean were here, instead of giving you this nice welcome, he'd have given you this one. I just want to let you know, aren't you happy you didn't have this one enacted in front of the room? Okay, hands up, who's seen the Note Well slide already this week? All right, there are 3 of you behind Xavier Marjou who did not raise their hand, so I'm going to walk back. We take this stuff seriously. All right, this is our agenda. First, we need to collect scribes and minute takers. Then we'll switch to a short item from Magnus. Then we'll go into the security documents. Then we'll go into RTC Web Transport. There is one issue that Peter Thatcher sent us some slides about. We have an issue on the FEC draft, and then we will look for all other business. So first, Jabber Scribe. This is somebody who will relay into the Jabber such important information as slide number, and will take from the Jabber such important information as anything preceded by an MIC colon. Really, you need to be able to parse a string, people. Who can do it? No one? Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan Lennox. Yes, you don't have to do anything except slide number. All right, then just parse for Mike colon and relay if need be. I still don't see, we still have my electric co-chair, but we don't have my other co-chair yet. So we have a moment to find somebody who would like to act as a minute taker. So you will recall that in the past we've had our minutes taken in the form of memes, haiku, and simple statements like, we decided to do X. Really, we decided to do X is about all you need to do. We don't need he said, she said, she said, thank you, or anything like detail, because we have the lovely recording from Meet Echo to remind us of whatever shenanigans we got up to. But I do need an official minute taker because I have to write that down in some place. So please at least put up your hand and pretend you're going to take minutes for me, because that would be very nice. Ben, thank you so much for pretending to take minutes. Really, if you could just write down if we come to any decisions, that would be very nice of you. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the previously unanticipated portion of our meeting. Magnus, leap up. Come to the pink box.
Oh, I can take it. Okay.
Not if you want Cullen to see you. Come to the pink box.
Okay. So, Magnus Westland. I just want to inform people here that, which hasn't been particularly clear yet, but we have found some issues around minor, mostly around simulcast and RID. It's going to be discussed in the MUsic meeting tomorrow. Watch the MUsic mailing list, because those issues are going to be on the mailing list as soon as I've finished typing them up, which hopefully is before the end of this session. So, but yes, they're going to be issues that those interested in simulcast probably should participate in. So, welcome to MUsic tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you very much, Magnus. And now, a brief moment of working group status performed by Sean in the method of interpretive dance. Given this particular slide, maybe not.
So we have this cluster. I searched Google for cluster and memes, and this was the cleanest one that came back.
Probably by a very long chalk.
Yeah. So we have these drafts that are there kind of chilling, waiting, and there's more going to get in there. These are just our drafts, by the way. Protocol is good. RTP usage is great. ALPN is awesome. Transport, we're going to talk a little bit later about. And overview is there now. Thank you very much, Harold, for coming back. I knew that when he left on sabbatical that we were still going to be talking about this when he came back, unfortunately. Next. That's the rest of it. Thanks, Cullen, if you're listening remotely, to updating these slides. I appreciate that. I looked in Google Slides and I was like, whoa, geez, I can't repeat what I thought in my head, but yeah, this is it.
Also, do not conduct a Google search for what he thought in his head.
Yeah, I can't wait to get done with this, and we probably should warn the RFC editor when it's coming out. So
the RFC editor. The RFC editor has laid in a supply of antacids and similar medicine.
We're not going to go through this, but you can kind of tell the not received parts are, some of these are, some of these other people. If you have any input into anything that's not getting done, and you are an author, help get that done. Please exert pressure, help the ADs, help us get done. That's really what we're about. 1.0 should have been out the door a while ago. Let's do that. Next. All right. Jason, great. Thank you for our authors for getting through this. For the longest time, that was the long pole in the tent. It no longer is. It's with our AD. Adam, would you like to speak a little bit about where it is with us? Are you ready to rock and roll?
It has a ballot date, so woohoo!
Yeah, no, it's on the telechat for December 14th.
So for that draft, since it's been so long in the coming, and literally it's a little probably controversial, do you think there's anything special that we need to do to?
Probably not. I gave the ISG a heads up that this is like a technically dense draft they might want to take a running start at, and I know that some people have taken that to heart.
Okay, fair enough. All right, cool. I mean, I think that we have other people to help in terms of Ben Ecker if he gets asked. Magnus, I'm sure that you could like lead a hand if we need to get there. All right, so we need another working group last call for our sec drafts. We thank you, got an update after some of the things got cleaned up. We went through once. They've been kind of like lingering around. It's time that after we get done with this, we're probably gonna need to run it again. It's gonna be 2 weeks. We're not gonna abbreviate it, which go for broke. Please read them. Like, I would like to catch anything we need to now. There are GitHub repos for both. If you think of anything that needs to get changed, please throw them in there. And the other ones that are up there. Feck. Is Bernard here? No, he's here. No. He's got one outstanding comment in Justin's repo that I'm hoping that we could figure out. I did send him an email that I was going to embarrass him at the microphone if he was here or remote. He is not. We will try to figure that out because Justin basically is like, hey, give me some feedback, and I haven't heard anything, so I'd like to make sure we can get to that point. IP handling is going to go essentially with the working group last calls after the security drafts because they're kind of grouped together. We've fought and presented a lot of slides about that particular draft, I think we can get there. And the STP examples were updated recently, and I think that'll be, it's also an equally technically dense draft, and I think that I thank the people that did reviews of that, and thanks Suhas for doing that. So that's, it's not blocking, correct. So that's like, it's probably going to go last. So, but it is a good draft. It's pretty dense. If you're implementing, that's great. It'll help. What? I don't know. Suhas. I think Suhas did it.
So here's the thing. Right? When we did this with JSEP, like we found a lot of problems with the handwritten examples, the few handwritten examples in JSEP. So I have like no confidence whatsoever that any human can write STP.
So I have to believe that he didn't do this by hand. I have to think that he took output. So we can ask explicitly. I think that's a fair question.
I guess I would. Like,
Colin, I believe you're a co-author on this draft. Would you mind letting us know?
Oh, he's there yet. Get in the queue, man.
Then that's not. We can't proceed that way.
Hey, there he is. Pac-Man.
Hey, that's so exciting. I can talk. Acker's point is, yeah, some scripts were used here and there, but basically these are hand-generated STP and have the type of errors that hand-generated STP may or may not have. I will say my experience with machine-generated STP is just as bad. So
yay for STP.
Yeah. I'm sure there will probably, he's gone through quite a bit of review, Nils, and I'm sure they have mistakes in them. I think there's really declining returns in getting them perfect. I think it would be better to get them done and then try and figure, and this is purely with my individual contributor hat on, and if we find mistakes in them, go fix them. I don't know, there's a whole lot more to do than that.
Well, I guess my question is it in fact work publishing a document which, like, the whole point of examples is the right, and if it's full of mistakes, then I'm not sure we're publishing the
these are not full of mistakes. Then they are probably less full. They have a low number of mistakes in them. I'm not saying there's no mistake in them, but most of the mistakes that are in them will be like some incredibly weird little thing of like, oh well, that identifier wasn't correct for what people are supposed to do. So we've run these through various parsers. We've done various things with them. There was a recent typo made in the most recent updates that were done, but they're pretty good.
Okay.
Since these are not blocking, I suggest that we put off the further discussion of them until later.
One more. Karen, do you have a tool for picking the SDP out of the drafts? Har alla chans picking?
No, we don't. That's been discussed various times, and there isn't one right now.
The reason is I want to make test cases for the website for them.
Yeah, I'm glad to help work on that type of stuff. I've helped do those, but not if this document's not going anywhere. So when this document is moving forward, then yes, I'll be happy to figure out how to extract the data out of it and test and put it into the test website. But if we're not publishing it, I don't care. If no one else cares, I don't care, and that's pretty much where everyone is on this one.
Magnus Westland. So in the music discussion around simulcast and what we had privately and with Mo, we have to look at if there actually should be better simulcast examples in this document. So that might be an addition that needs to go in.
Yeah, and happy to do that, or do simulcast in a separate document. We need to figure that out. Either way could work.
Yeah, let's figure this out and see what we do with it. But yeah, it should be. We need anyway to put good examples or better examples in the simulcast document itself. So we're probably going to write something up. So hopefully we can combine it in a nice way, so you can actually put them together, etc. So you get a complete example in this document, the RTC Web.
It's on my Mozilla. Given that I reviewed and I had like lots of difficulties parsing the simulcast examples in there, I think that speaks towards like a separate document.
Okay, there are a couple more slides here that deal with where dependencies are, but given that we're running a little bit behind, we're just going to go ahead and encourage you to read those from the proceedings, and we're going to go on to security.
This should be pretty short because I only got 4 slides, and that was one of them. So now that JSEP is pretty much done, and I don't have anything else to do with my time, I finally got around to working on this a little bit with a bunch of help from Richard Barnes. Actually, almost all the changes between the last draft and this draft were made with Barnes or other people, but I did push the publish button, so here we are. Next slide. So the security document, the main sort of the overview document, has basically only had trivial changes. I think a shortened abstract courtesy of Sean, a citation to RTCWEB IP handling. There are now no more GitHub issues or pull requests. So I think this is a complete thing, and we should be like shipping it out the door. As is Captain Kirk.
So the minute taker should note that we're going to working group last call the meeting's sec draft.
Seeing no objection. Ask for unanimous consent to proceed. Okay, next slide. So security architecture document is not quite in as good shape, but actually not too terrible. Largely, it's sort of suffered from a bunch of neglect and other things moving on behind us. So everybody seems to have kind of decided we're going to start to get user media to secure origins. So I made that change. This is actually a topic which I had pointed out we should probably discuss now. So all the browsers, I believe, are kind of converging on this. But if somebody objects to this, now is the time to raise an objection and say we should not do that. Okay, then. Seeing none.
Please go through
Jonathan, I assume you mean other than debug modes and the like. This is just for normal conformant behavior.
I mean, if you set all these browsers are full of flags that let you set ridiculous things. That's not like
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the way this gets implemented, it's using the W3C secure context spec, which has some affordances for debug modes and localhost and things like that.
Yeah. Okay. There used to be this API requirement that so as people may know, some browsers basically make all get user media permissions permanent, and some of them have an ability to have them be ephemeral. We initially had this text that said you required have an affordance in the API that would say, I want this ephemeral, I want this permanent. That never made it in the WC spec. I still think it was an okay idea, but it didn't happen. And Chrome and Chrome doesn't have ephemeral at all. So it doesn't seem like that's going to be a requirement that anybody believes in. So I removed it. There have been a bunch of when I wrote the text, or May Martin that I can't remember at this point, about screen sharing permissions, there's a bunch of wrappers around that about how we didn't have consensus on it. And the reason we had consensus is because the outcome was so terrible. The outcome isn't any better, but apparently people just decided to live with it. So Firefox and I think Chrome just basically, at least Firefox now has a big scary warning when you turn on screen sharing, a screen warning you can't understand, but still we ask you to understand it. And I think Chrome has an add-on still, but I'm sure they're going to move to scary warning sometime eventually because it's so intolerable to add an add-on. Anyway, this is the resolution such as it is, which is basically this sucks, and we're sorry about that. So I just removed the open issue warnings. Okay. Actually, I'm going to say I mean Richard once again, so we're just going to keep doing that. We cleaned up the SRTP requirements a bit. And there was a bunch of crap in the text from before we banned SDES that were there should be interface elements to tell you if you're doing SDES, but since you can't be doing SDES, then those interface elements are relevant, and so we removed that. and a bunch of other overtaken by event stuff like browser ID examples in the appendix and stuff like that. And since we're no longer doing browser ID, and pretty much nobody is, I think we can assume that those examples are not helpful. So they went away too. Why were we banning MKI, Richard?
So Martin Thompson, I would wonder whether or not it's actually interoperable given the amount that people use it. So maybe it's just a good idea to ban it, just because. But
if people feel strongly,
that would be the only reason that I'm aware of for banning it.
That was your PR, dude. His, not other Richard.
Yeah, I might be misremembering this, but I think MKI is not really defined for use with DTLS SRTP anyway. So
I think there is a crappy way to specify it.
Yeah, so it's like kind of, if it's specified, it's kind of halfway specified, and so it's just seemed cleaner not to use it here.
Well, if someone really wants it.
And to the degree that PERC will ever get implemented with this stuff, PERC works a little better without MKI there.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave this as it is unless somebody. Yeah, no, we have no opinion on EKT whatsoever.
So by ban. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in particular EKT is incompatible with MKI. So
good reason.
So PERC needs EKT. So if we're going to do PERC with this, then we can't have MKI.
Just to double check, by ban you do or do not mean must not.
Must not negotiate. Okay, and then there are still I think there were like 11 GitHub issues / PRs. I think I only put the issues up here. I tagged them. There are a couple PRs, but I think they were straightforward. And then there are a bunch of issues. And half of them I think I can resolve myself without any help. So did not discuss them. The remainder we could probably discuss for a little bit. Sean, if you can pull it up. I cleverly typed them for you, so it's really obvious. Now, I caution that I have had very little coffee and I have not read these sometimes, so it's gonna be interesting to see what they say, but we'll just take a look as they go. Since those were filed, yes, I know. And some of them may be OBE. But I was like doing TLS slides, so this is what you get. First issue. Yes, exactly.
That's issue 0. Just drag it to the other window.
There you go. Okay, so if you click on, if you do milestones, I believe, and you click on IETF 100, there you go. Okay, let's see. We might as well start at the top. Determining the IDP URI. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So Martin Thompson, I think this is just editorial. You don't include the fine. You don't include identity.example.com in the just deny it forever, man. It doesn't need to do anything. You don't include identity in the example, but Soros also points out that you have the redirect question, and that might benefit from a little bit of text. But I think you can sort this one out yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I can make sense of this.
Oh, it's right here, so.
Huh?
Yes, it is correct that it can be redirected. There are rules about what redirections are permitted, but it is correct that it can be redirected.
Okay.
So can we note that for issue 43, some editorial corrections will be entered?
Yeah. I don't know who's going to note that. If you know the issue, that'd be great. Okay.
Again, same applies here. I think we just need to have text about port numbers, where they go.
Where do they go?
Presumably in the domain field.
Yeah.
With a colon.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is the question. I mean, presumably they're allowed. Firefox allows them.
I mean, the problem is it's not a. I mean, it's not. There's the same origin though. Well, I guess no, it's not. You're right, but
they're not the same origin.
But it's a cryptographic, interchangeable.
Yeah, it's the same authority, maybe. I don't know. We could say that they're not, but I don't actually see a point.
Well, I think if we're going to say that if it is allowed, we should point out that that there's no way to distinguish at the TLS layer which port you're getting.
I think we should make that point anyway. Yes.
Okay.
So this all changes back to the Web PKI thing.
Right. So the relevant point is that the certificate, that yes, you can have a domain name, a port number in this field, but that port number cannot be verified cryptographically. It's just a bare assertion. The only thing you can verify is the domain name. Yes, but they'll have to warn that you can't distinguish it.
That's right. There's no practical ability to distinguish between 443 and 8,000.
Yeah.
So for the issue notes, please note that this actually also affects the section entitled. Sorry. Never mind. I'll just write a pull request.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay, next slide. Or next issue. Right. Multiple identity attributes. I think this is just like, I need to write some crap.
This is, again, you just need to write some crap. So, Martin Thompson again, I would say that the answer here is that if you have multiples, then anything goes. Currently, I believe you should probably just say only put one in.
Yeah, I think we should say you should only put one in, but if they're multiples or jointly asserted, that's the way it is.
Yes. And there's no expectation that any implementation would consume all of them.
Yeah. So the 3 points are: 1, you should only put one in; 2, the semantics are undefined if you put in more than one; and so 3 implementations need to only process 1.
Thanks, Richard.
3 implementations need only process 1 of them. Yeah.
Let's get all post-L on them.
Okay, good. Next one. So I'm really hoping to be out of here in 5 minutes or so.
Thanks, Colin.
Okay. Did we do this already? Section certificate management?
Possibly. There may be a PR on this one. So a lot of this is actually in the WebRTC doc, and it may not be necessary for us to do anything special.
I will figure out whether this exists or not, and if not, plagiarize or put pointers in. Yeah. Or when I say I mean Richard, but yeah,
we're all the same person.
All 3 of us, the 3 Richards. Okay, this actually might be meaningful. Is this really what we said in 5764? God, why did I do that?
Rather optimistically,
yeah.
5764 allows the same handshake to key multiple, essentially, components. And thanks, Magnus. There's probably the correct word. We should just say don't. I'd be surprised if JSEP doesn't already say don't.
We've effectively prohibited non-mux anyway, so.
Right.
So, Magnus Westlund, the reason why, you only would need 1 DTLS for a whole RTP session, because the key derivation step results in separate keys for RTP and RTCP.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
But I just think it's very hard to implement to have multiple transport components and 1 DTLS connection is hard to implement, and we didn't do it that way.
Yeah, there's no question that 5764 and 3711 are actually correct on this, and they have the ability to have the same root keying material derive properly independent keys for SRTP and SRTCP. But why would you do that?
And that's how MUX works, right? It's the problem isn't. I mean, Mux basically. Mux just replicates that situation all in one 5 tuple, right? I just think it's not like, as a practical matter, I'm not aware of any implementation which tries to do that for more than 5 tuple in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
I agree. It's irrelevant really to do.
Sounds
but
good.
Yeah, there's.
Okay. I feel like we're done now. Oh no, Ronnie, the microphone.
Ronnie, I can think of an idea where you want the RTCP different than the RTP. If you want the RTCP to be available for middle box and they'll have the keys just for the RTCP part.
Oh, yeah, but in that case, you would need a different TTLS connection. They have the non-mux, right? And that's totally reasonable. Okay. That's it. Yeah, I concluded I could manage this myself. If anyone wants to, I mean, if you want to. Yes. Under my sage guidance. Huh? Oh, you know. Thank God.
So these slides came from Peter Thatcher, who I do not see in the room or in the Meet Echo. Harold, for some reason, your smiling face is on the slides when I look at them through Google Docs. By any chance, would you like to, to go through them? Well, bye.
So I haven't actually read through the slides. So the point of this is that Peter Thatcher had pointed out to him rather forcefully by someone actually trying to ship products that they didn't know what would happen if they turned on these DHCP markings. So they would like to make that an experiment. But if using the priority model and they started diddling with the DHCP markings, they also diddled the queuing priority. Well, that isn't implemented either, but still, they felt that this was not right. So they wanted 2 controls, not 1. Because even though it mostly makes sense to have those be the same, for experimentation purposes, they're not. Okay, next slide. I'll proofread the full request before accepting it. Yeah. Yep. So this is the why. I didn't know that was the next slide. So, is there a 4th slide? Yep. Okay.
The key point about this presentation is that this draft is currently in the RFC editor's queue. Making these changes means we're pulling it back. I think that's okay because we have cluster 238. We're not speeding stuff up, or we're not slowing stuff down. But this does mean incorporating this change means we have to pull the crank to redo a targeted working group last call on this particular change, and we're going to require our AD can tell us whether or not we're supposed to do an IETF last call as well targeted just on these particular changes. My theory is that we can do a targeted one and it'll be fine because cluster 238 ain't going anywhere. And yes, Adam, this is the second one.
So beyond that point, understand that if you've already got code that uses the single parameter in the way it's currently described, it will suddenly be turning up as 2 parameters if we approve this, because the change to the W3C API will occur. So if you've got a working implementation that does it this way and you don't want to change it, now would be an awfully good time to explain why.
I think we can tweak the WebRTC PR to deal with that, but that's a WebRTC matter.
So I'm going to have to look at this more carefully. I don't have any context for what happened here. But in terms of 238, there's actually the stuff in front of WebRTC. There's like 12 documents, and most of them are like really close to being done. There's not as much in the way of publishing these as you're implying. But like I said, I haven't had time to look at this, and so I can't even really speak to it all that well.
Colin, do you want to speak to the...
I mean, I'm not speaking to whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, but I'm speaking to what the change is. Is right now the transport document is largely written on, there's this one value, there's one value that can be set to 4 enum values from low to high, and it controls a bunch of things with diffs code point markings, and it controls a bunch of other things. And instead, they're just changing it to 2 things with the same 4 enums for both of these things. The WebRTC part of it is done in a backwards compatible way where nothing changes from current behavior. You have to use a new and different API to set these things independently. I think this change is really pretty minimal in the what you need to review or what it changes in the document. The questions about when you would set these things differently or what it's useful for become much more complicated, as they always are with priority, of why you want to, how will users know what to set these differently to, and all of those things. But the experimentation argument is fine, and this doesn't stop anyone from doing it the other way. So I think this is a really minor change, I guess, is the argument I'm trying to make for it.
So Fluffy, I'm wondering whether or not, because the transport focuses primarily on the DSCP markings and the translations from these priorities to those markings, is it possible to somehow finagle this so that we just say in the WebRTC document that we really are talking, the marking priority is the one that actually applies, and the other one is just something that's local, because that
check the PR. It actually does that pretty decently.
Okay, so that's the WebRTC PR, not the transport PR.
The transport PR splits it apart.
Okay.
And
right, so
the WebRTC PR, I will suggest an update to that because of backwards compatibility.
For the same reason, yeah. Okay.
Ted Hardy from the floor, Mike. I think you may have just handled my issue. Let me confirm my understanding. After your update to the WebRTC PR, somebody who uses the currently shipping mechanism will continue to use this mechanism if they do not wish to experiment with having these set to different priorities. Is that correct?
That is my intention.
Okay.
I have not written the suggestion yet.
Okay, because that actually makes a pretty basic change to my view of this, because my honest impression is, although you might use this in experimentation, the number of cases in the wild where you're going to have a different internal queue priority and statement to the wire about the actual priority for this set of enums, for low to high, is really kind of like, yeah, you're going to experiment with it, you're going to decide you're never going to do it, and you're always going to set them to be the same. I'm not willing to stake large sums of money on it, but I would bet you a beer. I understand there are cases people are floating around, but I'm going to guess the 90th to 95% of the time, it's going to be the same, and that the rest of the time it's going to make no practical difference. I could be just cynical. But if you're going to be able to keep the old way of doing things, I don't care.
So Martin Thompson, I think I understand the reason for the 2 separate markings, and I think there may be cases where this is important. And the 2 markings govern the allocation of bits that you can send within your available envelope, congestion, whatnot, and how fast you want them to get through. And so for something like voice, maybe you're not giving it that many bits, but maybe you might want to give the video a lot of bits, for instance, and that's the sort of trade-off that we're talking about here.
I'll be happy to pay off the beer if it actually turns up in the way.
John Dennings, I think the other potential case is, I don't trust that any router does DSCP right, and so I'm just going to turn it off because I feel like if I turn on any DSCP other than setting it to all zeros, things might blow up. So
I'm not sure I'll pay off a beer if you've just not set the DSCP to anything but zeros. But I see your point.
Magnus Westland. So, I mean, on the mailing list, we had the discussion around this issue to some degree, and I'm not convinced that this kind of use case for example, for audio codec is that you will really set a low bitrate priority. It's just that you want to cap the bitrate at some given level, which in many cases makes more sense in this kind of saying, okay, this is an important stream, but when you get into this point, don't give it more bits. Or actually change the priority at a certain, and that's kind of an issue here, which becomes very complex very fast.
But this is just an enum of 4 priorities, right? You're not expressing the bits in it at any level of granularity, right?
No, but I mean, if it's based, I think the model on basically a scheduling weighted round, I mean, round robin queuing, basically, that you say, okay, you first take the highest rate, give them a certain amount of bits, and then you use one to the next queue, etc. If you have that model, you assign a lot of bits that's not going to be used by that stream. But if the bits become few, then you actually wanted them. So that means that you need to track the bit rate and change the priority settings for the bit priority when it gets really low. Otherwise, the audio codec will get less than you intended to. So I don't know which. You get into some user problems depending on where you are in the envelope. So I understand this is, I mean, finding something which is both giving the flexibility and easy to use is actually quite hard, I think. So,
So after that discussion, we need to decide whether or not we're going to incorporate this change. Do people feel like they understand? If anybody wants to get to the microphone and say they don't get it, please do so now. I'm leading up to a hum, and I'm putting you on the spot purposely. I don't want you to hum if you don't get what's going on. I want you to hum also if you get what's going on. So what I would like to do now is hum if you agree with incorporating this change. Please hum now if you agree with incorporating the change. Please hum now if you think this change should not be incorporated. So I'm feeling that this should not be incorporated at this point. The consent, I think it's rough consensus that the change should not be incorporated this time. Adam, do you agree with my assessment? Okay, fair enough. I think it stands. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's by rough, very rough. Correct. So we're not going to do that. We're going to close this pull request, and we're not going to need an additional working group last call and IETF last call to incorporate this. Thank you. At this point, the only remaining issue that I would like to bring up, if anyone would like to say anything, is about this FEC question. I know that Bernard's not here. I don't know if anyone else who knows anything about FEC wants to say anything, but we've got this kind of one more, there's references, but I think that's kind of a minor point, right? This is a point that Bernard brought up, and we were kind of curious if Bernard had something more to say, and he doesn't, or hasn't, for months at this point. So my question is, at this point, what do we do with this? I would like to help Justin get done with this particular draft. I'm trying to drive consensus purposely. Does anyone want to get to the microphone to speak this particular issue or not? If nothing is said, I think that we should probably close this and move on. I am now opening the floor for you to get to the microphone to go one way or the other on this particular issue, or to argue with my way forward.
Ted Hardy, I actually think the point that Fluffy made pretty early on is kind of salient, and that's that Opus requires the FEC to be sent. What you do with the FEC once you get it, I mean, the extent to which you apply it is kind of.
So what you're saying, mandatory to implement is mandatory to send?
Well, that's actually what the Opus RFC says. If I it requires it to be possible to send. Requires it to be okay. I'll go back and look. I may have misunderstood it.
So thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan X. I mean, it's a tuning parameter for a sender to decide whether to turn on FEC or not in any given time. You can say, I think this, I believe that my connection will be perfect, so I don't need to send FEC information. On the receive side, I mean, there's no negotiation as to whether you support FEC in the payload format. But you're not, I mean, the decoder process is not required to use it, but you'd be stupid not to if somebody happens to be sending it. But that's a quality of implementation issue.
All right, Colin.
So I think we're getting a little bit sidetracked here. We're reading this too literally. I think that Bernard's case was using FEC is not really using the Opus built-in FEC is not really very effective, was what their tests found compared to something like FlexFEC. So our I'm assuming what his assumption or suggestion would be is the spec should say, you should not send Opus FEC, and instead you should use one of the more complex FEC mechanisms that works better that we've defined for WebRTC. I suspect that that's the really where he would be on the underlying issue if we could get there. I see this as a quality and implementation type issue. I mean, there's nothing stopping any given implementation from doing that today or not doing that today. Given the late stage in the game, I don't think this is really important to nail down a specification.
I don't see people running to the microphone line to disagree. Can we document that somehow, Colin, and get this done so that, because this is literally, other than the references, this is the thing that's stopping this document from being working group last calls. Sure. So I just want to figure out how to.
Well, why don't we construct an email and send it to Bernard and see if A, he can live with that, and if B, it's semi-consistent with what he was thinking, and if he is, then I think we can go forward with that, and if he's thinks there's some much deeper issue the working group needs to deal with, we can bring this back. But I doubt this is a big deal.
That would be the minute taker noting that Colin's going to help me write that email. Thanks, Colin.
Okay, sounds like.
So that, at this point, concludes the working group. I would like to point out that I believe that we'll be setting some working group last calls on the security draft, the FEC draft, and the security architecture draft after we incorporate the pull requests. And hopefully that means that we won't just be meeting in North America never again. We'll never be meeting again as RTC Web. That would be kind of awesome. So thank you very much.
So for the security drafts, I remind you that they still contained references to SDES. So it's been a long time. Please, everybody, take a fresh look at those as soon as you possibly can. Thank you. No, not even now. They until quite recently, yeah. I'm saying.
So I will get that.
Discovery. We saw we're going to redo it.
So with the I mean, I'm going to provide us I'm not going to do that discovery draft out, get everyone happy. We're probably involved in information change.
So, so I mean, I guess certainly if you just want to look it up, we can take a look.
I'm not sure how it would work either, because it's like there's a different way to fixing the IPs. But if it can work, that's still worth looking at. Yeah, so right now, that, I don't know how far along that is with the privacy work. So ideally, we could try to glue the two together and see if it can make sense.
I like to pull in these out. Like, no, I haven't. Roach, when you get a minute? Yeah. But also make certain you're not touching